The air holds a quiet stillness, as if the entire world is holding its breath. You lie there, half awake, feeling the cool whisper of the sea breeze brushing over your skin. Somewhere beyond the edge of the horizon, the sun is waiting, not yet seen, but already making its presence known. The faintest shimmer of light stretches across the water, a fragile thread connecting you to the coming day. You breathe in deeply. The air tastes of salt, faintly metallic and laced with the cool dampness of dawn. The ocean before you lies in a state of glassy calm, the gentle waves only hinting at their slow dance beneath the surface. A faint glow in the east grows stronger, and you feel as though you are watching the earth itself turning, an invisible but constant motion, spinning you toward the light. It's a movement you can't feel, yet your eyes tell you it's happening. This is the planet's quiet rhythm, the rotation that has been unfolding for billions of years, the same turning that brought light to the earliest oceans long before. There was a human to witness it. The colors begin as a subtle wash, the deep navy of the night sky bleeding into pale blue, then into a thin band of soft gold just above the waterline. This is more than just beauty. It is physics in motion. High above you, sunlight begins its journey through the atmosphere, bending and scattering in ways you can almost imagine as a painting in motion. The blue wavelengths, short, quick, restless, scatter first, tinting the sky overhead. The longer, slower reds and oranges pass more directly through, pooling near the horizon in gentle fire. What you are seeing is the scattering of light, Rayleigh scattering, a phenomenon so simple in principle, yet so complex in its effect, that it can turn a waking sky into something that feels like a living thing got as the sun approaches the edge of the world. Its light must pass through more of the atmosphere, a greater depth of air filled with molecules, dust, and salt from the sea. Each tiny particle becomes a painter's brush, softening and diffusing the light, removing some colors and enhancing others. You begin to see streaks of rose and amber curling through the clouds, as if the morning itself is brushing them with delicate hands. A single seabird calls in the distance, its cry both lonely and reassuring. The sound carries far in the still air, a reminder that life has already begun to stir while you linger in this liminal space between night and day. You watch its shadow skim the surface of the water, ripples spreading outward until they dissolve. Back into calm dot, now the edge of the sun appears, a thin arc of molten gold breaking the line between sea and sky. It is a slow reveal, but it feels inevitable, the way a tide comes in, the way a flower opens. This is the moment when the energy that has traveled 93 million miles finally reaches you. You can almost imagine the photons, born in the heart of the sun's nuclear furnace thousands of years ago, finally arriving at your eyes after an unimaginably long journey. They bring warmth, they bring life, and they bring the day. You feel that warmth begin to seep into your skin, gentle at first, as if the sun is cautious about disturbing the cool air's hold. There is something deeply grounding about feeling the planet turn you toward this light, as if no matter what storms might come later, there will always be this returning. Every sunrise is both the same and different, the same motion, the same physics, but an infinite variation of color, cloud, and air that the science of it hums quietly beneath the poetry. The Earth spins eastward at roughly 1,670 kilometers per hour. At the equator, a fact you cannot feel but can trust in completely, the angle of its tilt changes the quality of this light, giving you the seasons. The sun's energy, measured in watts per square meter, shifts slightly with the height of the day, but in this moment, none of that feels like a number. It feels like a slow unveiling, a gift of color and warmth offered without haste. The reflection on the water grows sharper as the sun climbs, the gold line brightening into a path that seems to lead directly to you. You've read before that the shimmer on the surface, The path of light across ripples is called a glitter path, a term both playful and exact. Each tiny wave acts like a mirror, catching and releasing sunlight in fractions of a second. Together, they create a living ribbon of gold across the blue-gray expanse. You watch as the shadows shift. The rocks at the shore take on depth and texture, their surfaces catching the early light in patches. Tiny shells glisten where the tide has drawn back. A hermit crab moves, almost invisible, tracing a small, meandering path toward the edge of the water. Every small detail is now part of the morning's awakening, revealed by photons that moments ago were still making their way through the upper air dot. The longer you watch, the more you notice the air changing. The coolness softens, replaced by a gentle warmth that seems to lift the scent of the sea higher. This is convection beginning, the sun heating the air near the surface, causing it to rise. Somewhere above, invisible currents begin to form, weaving patterns that will shape the day's weather. It is quiet here, but the atmosphere is already moving, already preparing for the day's unseen choreography. Your breathing slows to match. The pace of the waves, in and out. And out, the science and the sensation blend together in your mind. The scattering of light, the motion of the earth, the endless journey of photons. And yet none of it feels abstract. It feels personal, almost intimate, like a daily ritual that has been written into the planet's memory. The sun is now a full circle above the horizon, and the colors shift once again. The fiery reds fade, replaced by pale gold and growing blue. The higher the sun climbs, the less atmosphere its light must pass through, and so the scattering changes. The reds and oranges retreat, and the blues grow richer. Soon the day will be bright, the light more direct, the shadows shorter. But this moment, this fragile, golden threshold between night and day, will not return until tomorrow. You take one last, lingering look at the horizon. The water has begun to sparkle more insistently, each wavelet catching the light like a jewel. A seabird has vanished into the distance, replaced by the boundary between land and sea is not a line you can draw. It shifts hour by hour, season by season, moon by moon. One moment, the ocean leans forward, claiming more of the shore. The next, it withdraws, leaving a fresh ribbon of wet sand that gleams in the sunlight. You stand here, at this edge, and feel the truth of it. This is not a border, but a handshake, the earth's solid crust and its liquid skin meeting and parting in an endless, graceful rhythm. The tide is rising. Now, its arrival unhurried but certain. From where you stand, the movement is barely noticeable. The waves seem to repeat themselves in the same place. But if you wait, if you give it time, you see the change. Each surge pushes just a little farther up the beach. Each retreat leaves the foam line higher than before. This is the moon's work, though the sun lends its hand. The moon's gravity tugs at the ocean, drawing a bulge of water toward it. On the far side of the earth, another bulge forms, created by inertia as the planet spins. The earth rotates through these bulges, and so the water rises and falls along the coasts. 2 high tides and 2 low tides most days. The sun, though much farther away, also pulls, and when its pull aligns with the moon's, the tides are stronger spring tides. When they are at right angles, the tides are gentler, neap tides. Here at the shoreline, you are standing inside that celestial choreography, feeling its reach without ever seeing the moon itself. You can almost imagine the ocean breathing, inhaling with the incoming tide, exhaling with the retreat. The sound of the waves is its voice. The push and pull against your feet is its heartbeat. You take a few steps forward until the water curls around your ankles. The incoming tide wraps you in its coolness before sliding away again, leaving behind a fine lace of foam. Each time it returns, it brings something different, A strand of kelp, a fragment of shell, the glint of wet pebbles turned by the surf. The shoreline is an exchange table, and the tide is its courier, delivering and collecting an equal measure dot at your feet. The sand moves under the water's weight. Grains shuffle and roll, lifted and set down again. Some are carried away entirely, to be dropped in deeper water. Others travel sideways, carried by longshore currents that run parallel to the beach. Over time, these movements sculpt the shore, building sandbars, carving channels, reshaping the coastline's curve. The edge is never still. It is always editing itself. Small creatures make their living in this restless zone. You notice tiny crabs darting sideways, disappearing into narrow holes before the next wave arrives. A line of sanderlings, small, quick birds, rush forward with each retreat, pecking at the wet sand, then scurrying back before the next wave curls in. Beneath the surface, clams and worms filter the water, drawing food from the tide's passing gifts. This zone, called the intertidal, is both generous and harsh, rich in nutrients, but constantly in flux. Only life that can adapt to change thrives here. You crouch to watch the foam swirl into delicate spirals as the water slides back. Those patterns, temporary, intricate, form from the same physics that shapes spiral galaxies and cloud systems. Fluids, whether water or air, follow rules you can see without needing to know their equations. The ocean writes those rules onto the sand every time it meets the land. The air smells stronger here, sharper with salt and the faint mineral tang of wet stone. Each breeze carries the breath of both worlds, the warm, dry scent of the land and the cool, moist signature of the sea. On calm days, the blend is soft, almost sweet. On stormy days, it becomes a raw, bracing perfume. This place teaches you that edges are not only boundaries, they are also places of mingling, of creation. The tide has reached farther now, swirling around a cluster of rocks ahead. You walk toward them, feeling the pull of curiosity. These rocks, dark and rough, have stood here through countless cycles of tide and season. They are encrusted with barnacles, each one a small living fortress. Seaweed drapes in green ribbons from their sides, swaying gently in the water. Tiny tide pools have formed in the crevices, holding miniature worlds of their own. Anemones with tentacles like soft threads, snails tracing slow paths, fish no bigger than your fingertip darting in and out of shadow. These pools are snapshots of the sea held still for a moment, yet they too are shaped by the tide. When the water rises, they merge with the ocean, refreshing their contents. When it falls, they are left behind, isolated until the next high tide. In that isolation, they become laboratories of survival, places where species endure changes in temperature, oxygen, and salinity, waiting for the sea to return. You place your hand on the rock, feeling the cool slickness of algae beneath your fingers. This stone, like the sand beneath your feet, is slowly shaped by its meetings with the ocean. Waves wear it down grain by grain, while marine life bores into its surface, carving tiny shelters. The process is slow, almost invisible, but over decades and centuries, it transforms the landscape. As you step back from the rocks, you notice how the edge itself has moved in your absence. The water now reaches where you stood before, erasing your footprints. It is a reminder that here, permanence is an illusion. The edge is not a place you can claim. It is a moment you can visit. The tide begins to turn, its highest reach passing without ceremony. You can feel the shift not in a single wave, but in the way the water now lingers a little less with each touch. Soon it will retreat, revealing what it has hidden: fresh lines of shells, patches of seaweed, patterns pressed into the sand by the sea's hand. The shoreline you will see then will not be the one you saw earlier. Standing here, you sense the vast scales at play, the daily rhythm of tides, the seasonal shifts of currents, the geological timescales over which coasts evolve. The meeting of ocean and land is not just a place, it is a process, one that has been shaping Earth since the first seas formed. You are watching something ancient and ongoing, something that will continue long after you step away. You take a final breath of the mingled air, feeling the coolness from the water and the warmth from the sun. The edge hums with quiet life, not loud, not urgent, but steady. And as the tide pulls back, you notice the wet gleam left on the sand, like a promise that the sea will return. You follow the retreating water with your eyes, wondering what secrets lie just beneath its surface, waiting for the moment when the tide will pull back far enough to show them. The tide has drawn back just far enough to reveal the shallows, that delicate zone where land is still a presence, but the sea has not yet let go. You step forward carefully, your feet sinking into the cool, fine sand. The water here is thin, only a hand's depth, and so clear that every ripple carries sunlight in silver threads across the bottom. This is a place of hidden abundance, where creatures live between worlds, breathing both water and air, moving with the tides like a heartbeat. You kneel, letting your hand hover just above the surface. The first movement you see is small, almost nothing, until your eyes adjust. A crab, no bigger than your thumb, is halfway buried in the sand. Only its eyes protrude, set on tiny stalks that swivel in your direction. It does not flee immediately. It waits, assessing you, before deciding that stillness is the safer choice. The shallow zone demands this kind of patience, an instinct to pause and blend rather than run. A little farther on, a cloud of minnows scatters in perfect unison, each turning at the same instant as if guided by a shared thought. Their sides catch the light, flashing briefly before they vanish into deeper water. The science behind this synchronized movement is called the confusion effect. Predators find it harder to target a single fish when the whole school moves as one. What looks like beauty is also defense. You notice that here, every adaptation has two purposes: to survive and to belong. The crab's coloring matches the sand, not by accident, but through generations of selection. The fish know the exact shadows to hide in. Even the shells scattered along the bottom have been shaped not just by the creatures that built them, but by the push and pull of waves, grinding them smooth. The shallows are warmer than the open sea, the sun's touch lingering longer in this thin water. This warmth accelerates life. Tiny snails inch along rocks, their spiral homes glistening. An anemone, anchored firmly to stone, sways its tentacles in the water's slow drift, capturing invisible food. You lean closer, watching its movements, patient, deliberate. It has no eyes, no brain, and yet it knows how to live here, how to make the most of what the tide brings. A glint catches your attention near a patch of seagrass, swaying like green ribbons. You wade closer, the sand shifting beneath your toes. There, tucked between the blades, is a young flatfish. Its body is so well camouflaged that you nearly miss it, mottled like the sand, with both eyes on one side of its head. Flatfish begin. Life like other fish, eyes on opposite sides, but as they grow, one eye migrates until both face upward. It's a transformation written into their very bones, an adaptation to a life spent pressed against the seafloor. The seagrass itself is alive with movement. Tiny shrimp flicker in and out of view, translucent except for their dark, bead-like eyes. These grasses are nurseries, offering shelter to young fish, crabs, and countless other species. They are also oxygen factories, photosynthesizing in the underwater light and releasing fresh oxygen into the shallows. Each blade is part of a larger network, roots knitting into the sand, trapping it, preventing erosion, holding this edge of the world together. The more you watch, the more you see that life here is an unbroken web. A heron lands silently, Few meters away, its long legs barely disturbing the water. It waits, perfectly still, before spearing its beak down into the shallows and emerging with a small fish. The fish becomes part of the heron's life, and the heron's droppings will return nutrients to the water, feeding plants and plankton. The cycle is simple and complete. You glance toward the open sea and see a faint line of darker water moving. Closer, a small wave. It rolls into the shallows, lifts your ankles in a brief embrace, and moves past, carrying with it a mix of silt and plankton. The creatures here are ready for it. Filter feeders, mussels, clams, even tiny barnacles, open themselves to the passing water, straining out what they need. They cannot chase their food. They must wait for it to come to them. In the shallows, patience is not just a virtue. It is survival. In a shallow pool left behind by the tide, you see a cluster of hermit crabs. Each wears a borrowed shell, some smooth, some chipped. They are not true crabs, but relatives of lobsters, with soft, vulnerable bodies that need the shelter of shells. As they grow, they must find larger shells, sometimes engaging in patient exchanges with others, a quiet negotiation in which several line up in size order, ready to move into the next available home. You watch as one crab inspects another's shell, taps it gently, and then moves on. It is a reminder that even competition here is measured, almost courteous. You look down at your own feet in the clear water and realize that tiny fish are approaching, nibbling at your skin. They are feeding on the faint film of organic matter we all carry, a small recycling of energy. Their presence feels like a greeting, a reminder that in the shallows, you are not separate from the ecosystem. You are part of it, however briefly. Above you, the light shifts as a thin cloud passes over the sun. The water cools slightly, and the change is immediate. Some creatures retreat into shelter, others emerge. The shallows respond to light and shadow with the same sensitivity as a meadow or forest. Temperature, brightness, even the angle of the sun shapes life here. A warm morning draws activity. A cooler afternoon slows it. You crouch to watch a snail leaving a fine trail in the sand. The line it creates will be erased by the next small wave. But for now, it's a map, a record of a journey made in patient increments. Beside it, a tiny burrow collapses, and a ghost shrimp vanishes into the sand, leaving only a puff of cloudy water behind. Life here is both exposed and hidden, revealing itself only in moments, and then disappearing back into its element. The longer you stay, the more you realize that the shallows are not empty space between the shore and the deep. They are a threshold, a place of constant negotiation between safety and risk, abundance and scarcity. The creatures here live in cycles shorter than your days, but no less important. They feed when the tide covers them, hide when it retreats, and begin again without complaint. A gust of wind ruffles the water's surface, scattering sunlight into 1,000 moving patterns. You watch as the minnows return, darting among the seagrass in bursts of silver. The crab you saw earlier has moved on, leaving a faint depression where it hid. The heron is gone, its long shadow replaced by the gentle sway of the grass. Everything changes here, and yet it feels the same dot in the distance. You see a cluster of larger rocks breaking the surface, each draped with seaweed. Between them, shallow pools glisten, their surfaces smooth as glass. You feel the pull to go closer, to see what those pools might hold. You imagine small starfish clinging to stone, brittle stars curling in crevices, maybe even an octopus hidden in shadow, its skin changing color to match the rock. The shallows lead naturally to these pools, quiet pockets where the sea lingers long after the tide has gone. You straighten slowly, the water slipping away from your legs as you step back toward the dry sand. The creatures of the shallows remain behind you, continuing their lives without pause. The tide will come in again, covering their world, bringing new food, new challenges, and new moments of stillness. You carry their quiet resilience with you. The knowledge that survival here is not about strength alone, but about the ability to live gracefully in constant change. And as you look toward the darker rocks ahead, you feel the invitation of the tide pools, stiller waters where the sea keeps its secrets just a little longer, waiting for those who are willing to kneel and look closely. You tilt your face to the open sky and feel its width settle into you. The blue is not one color, but a layered hush, pale near the horizon and deeper overhead, like water in reverse. Thin clouds drift as though time itself were breathing slower. You sense currents you cannot see, rivers of air sliding above the shore, bending around heat and headland, carrying stories from distant seas. For now, the morning is gentle, the breeze a cool ribbon along your cheeks. Salt lingers from the waves, yet the sky adds its own notes, the faint metallic hint after lightning far away, the clean anonymity of dry air. High above, water vapor crosses a threshold and becomes visible, tracing translucent veils. Cirrus, made of ice, speaks softly of fair weather now and quiet change later. Their filaments combed by wind you track a gull gliding along an invisible rail. Birds read the sky's textures the way you read sand with bare feet. From sunlit dunes, thermals rise like silent elevators. The gull enters one and climbs without a wing beat. Convection writes columns and eddies, the same physics that curled foam at your ankles, now sculpting air. Warm parcels rise, cool ones descend, and the sky breathes without hurry. Near the horizon, a bank of cumulus swells like rising bread. Their tops billow where updrafts feed them. Their bases rest at the height, where air cools to dew point and droplets appear. Each cloud is a community, droplets merging and parting in minutes. Sunlight scatters within them, softening edges and brightening crowns. Even their shadows feel tender, drifting over the beach like passing thoughts. You notice the gradient overhead, the way blue deepens with height. Rayleigh scattering favors shorter wavelengths, sending blue sideways more than red. That scattered blue fills your vision, while longer wavelengths travel straighter from the sun. At sunrise and dusk, light takes a thicker path, losing blue to scattering in dust, leaving ambers and rose. The sky is not painted. It is sifted. A thin contrail threads the high air, a temporary line unraveling in sheer. What begins as ice from engine exhaust becomes a tracer for invisible layers, moving at different speeds and directions. You read the line like handwriting. Above it, a faint halo smudges the sun into a muted coin. Plate-shaped crystals align as they fall, bending light at fixed angles. Weather speaks in symptoms. Over the water, a gauze of haze softens the far horizon. Sea spray and moisture seed droplets that veil distance, blending ocean and air. In this softened space, the sun sketches crepuscular rays that appear to fan from one point, though they are near parallel shafts shaped by perspective. Geometry makes a quiet theater above the surf, where brightness becomes architecture. Clouds gather in rippled fields like sandbars. Altocumulus undulates where waves of air-gravity waves rise and fall after flowing over distant terrain. The atmosphere sometimes behaves like the sea, translating disturbance into pattern. You imagine a deep ocean of gas, currents layered, eddies nested within eddies. Weather is not chaos. It is complexity shaped by boundaries, energy, and time. You listen for thunder and hear only surf. Yet electricity lives quietly, a global separation of charge between land and sky, balanced by a constant whisper of lightning somewhere on Earth. On some days, small cumulus tower into anvils and broadcast their power. Lightning equalizes, thunder explains, rain resolves. Today the engine idles. The peace is poised by noon, the beach exhales heat. Over land, Rising air draws in cooler marine. Air to replace its sea breeze circulation, renewing with the sun. This exchange is a conversation across the shoreline, the atmosphere redistributing sunlight's gift. The breeze curls around you like friendly hands, turning pages of your hair, reminding you that comfort is a moving state, maintained by flow. You lie back and watch the parade. Fair weather curls, a fading moon pale as a thumbprint, a hawk riding slow ovals. The sky's clock keeps time without ticks, high clouds arriving before lower ones, wind veering a point toward the west, the scent of dryness replacing brine. You realize prediction is mostly attention, and attention, practiced gently, becomes a form of care. A gull returns, now beating against a stronger breeze. Tiny mares' tails trail from the higher cloud, wing shear teasing them into hooks. Sublimation and deposition trade forms ice to vapor, vapor to ice without the pause of liquid. Phase change is the sky's quiet alchemy, fueled by latent heat hidden within every drop and crystal. Energy banked and spent in silence. Late light warms and colors shift. A calm gold spreads across cloud and water. Shadows lengthen like thoughtful pauses. The beach brightens under open patches, then dims beneath moving veils. Somewhere inland dust turns the sun ruddy. Offshore, clean air sharpens edges. The sky is regional and universal at once, a single body speaking with local accents to every shore. You close your eyes and count 10 breaths. In that span, air from the subtropics inches closer, and one molecule of vapor chooses condensation over drift. The atmosphere is a cascade of decisions made by temperature, pressure, and chance. Yet its sum feels benevolent, a roof, a lung, a lens. You breathe again, and the dome seems to breathe with you. When you open your eyes, a sundog winks to the right of the sun, a bright echo colored like a small fallen rainbow. Hexagonal plates high in the cold align as they sink, catching light at a fixed angle and sending it toward you. The phenomenon feels intimate, as if the sky wrote your name in refraction, and the wind read it back aloud. That evening gathers with unhurried grace. Blue deepens toward cobalt. First stars sharpen where the air is driest. The beach grows quieter, and the sky lowers its voice to a comforting murmur. You feel protected and invited, sheltered by this vast, breathing dome and drawn upward by its patient lights. You let your attention rest there, calm as tide at slack water. The first sign is not the color, but the feeling. The air changes. The warmth you've carried on your skin all afternoon begins to ease, replaced by a cooler edge that feels like the earth itself taking a deeper breath. Somewhere behind you, the shoreline hums with quieter energy. Waves still arrive, but their sound seems softer, as if they too are adjusting to the evening. You turn toward the horizon, and there it is, the sun, no longer high and commanding, but low and deliberate. Its light has shifted from bright gold to a deep amber, a color that seems to contain the weight of the whole day. The sky begins to open in layers. Near the horizon, an orange glow like the heart of a lantern. Above it, a sweep of rose, fading into violet as it climbs dot. This transformation begins with the simplest of physical truths. The light now travels farther through the atmosphere to reach you. At midday, sunlight comes almost straight down, passing through a relatively thin layer of air. Now, with the sun near the horizon, its rays must cross a longer path, a corridor filled with air molecules, dust, salt, and water vapor. The short, blue wavelengths scatter out of the direct line of sight, leaving the longer reds and oranges to dominate your view. This is Rayleigh scattering, the same principle that makes the midday sky blue, now painting the world in fire and wine. The change is slow, and that is its magic. You can feel it unfolding in real time, every few minutes bringing a deepening of color, a softening of edges. Shadows lengthen across the sand, stretching toward you like slow-moving tides. Rocks, once bright under the sun, now hold darker tones, their surfaces textured in new ways by the angled light. The ocean shifts from silver blue to molten bronze, the crests of waves catching the last brilliance before sinking back into shadow. The air feels different too. As the ground loses heat, the balance between land and water changes. The breeze turns, bringing with it cooler, denser air from over the ocean. You inhale, and the salt scent is sharper now, layered with the faint mineral fragrance of drying sand. It is as if the day, in its final act, has decided to give you its clearest air. Birds respond in their own way. Overhead, the calls of gulls grow fewer, replaced by the low, methodical wing beats of those heading toward roosts. A line of pelicans glides just above the water, their silhouettes etched against the glowing band of the horizon. Their movement is steady, unhurried, as though they have measured the remaining light and know precisely when to leave. The colors deepen. Orange becomes crimson. Rose fades toward lavender. The highest parts of the sky turn a cooler blue, and at the very top, a faint star appears, hesitant at first, but growing sharper as you watch. This moment, when day and night share the sky, feels like a held breath. It is both an ending and a beginning, a transition so gradual that you can never say exactly when it has passed. You notice how the ocean mirrors the sky. The water no longer reflects light directly into your eyes, but gathers it, holding it like a slow-burning ember. Each small wave carries a ribbon of color along its crest, copper, pink, sometimes a fleeting green, as the light refracts through just the right angle. That green is rare, the result of sunlight bending differently at the very edge of the horizon, separating into layers that briefly let the green wavelength shine through. The temperature drops another degree, almost imperceptibly, but enough to make you draw your arms closer to your body. This is the Earth releasing the heat it has stored during the day. Infrared energy radiates back into space, and without the sun's direct light, the balance tips toward cooling. It is a reminder that light is more than what you see. It is warmth, motion, life. Somewhere inland, you imagine the first night insects, beginning their chorus, timed to the dimming light. Here, the beach remains mostly quiet, the soundtrack a steady mix of surf and the occasional rustle of wind through dune grass. The world feels as if it is lowering its volume in preparation for the darker hours ahead. The sun now sits so low that it is half hidden by the horizon. This is the moment when shadows are longest, when colors are richest. You can see the atmospheric layers themselves, a near line of orange fading into rose, then violet, then the deeper blue above. These gradients are shaped by the very curvature of the earth, the roundness you cannot see, but can feel in the way the light bends. You think about how this same sunset is being watched from countless other shores, fields, and city streets. Science is the same everywhere, but the details, the air's clarity, the landscape's reflection, the season's tilt, make each one unique. Even here, no two evenings are alike. The clouds, the moisture in the air, the dust blown in from far-off lands, all shift the palette in ways you cannot predict. The last sliver of sun touches the waterline, and the sky seems to hold on to it for a heartbeat longer, unwilling to let go. Then it slips entirely from view, leaving behind a glow that lingers longer than you expect. This afterlight, civil twilight, is the sun's parting gift, when enough light remains for colors to breathe, even as the first stars take their places overhead. You feel the day's warmth fully gone now. The sand beneath your feet is cooler, the air gentler. The ocean, still moving to its own ancient rhythm, seems darker and more mysterious. The light is no longer above, but around you, diffused, softer, carrying no sharp edges. In the western sky, the colors continue to fade, sliding from fire into embers. The oranges melt into rose, the rose into violet, the violet into the deepening blue of night. High above, the faint star you saw earlier is now joined by others, and their presence shifts your gaze upward. The horizon becomes a line, not just between sea and sky, but between the world you inhabit and the vast space beyond. The breeze is steady now, almost cool enough to raise a shiver. You know that soon the night air will settle into a rhythm of its own, shaped by the moon and the stars, by temperature gradients and silent winds. For now, though, you remain in this in-between, not quite day, not yet night, watching the last traces of sunlight dissolve into the dark. And as you stand in the deepening twilight, you find yourself wondering how the first stars will look when darkness finally takes the sky, and what quiet truths the night will choose to reveal. The first stars appear almost without notice. One here, one there, faint and quiet at first, as if testing the depth of the darkness. You tilt your gaze upward, and more reveal themselves, patient pinpricks of light, their histories stretching across years, centuries, even millennia. Some of these photons began their journey before you were born, before the buildings and paths you know existed, even before entire civilizations rose and fell. Now they end that journey here, on your eyes, in this single, still moment. The beach has changed with the light. The sand is no longer gold but silver, each grain reflecting the faintest hints of starlight and moonlight. The ocean has lost its bright shimmer, becoming a dark expanse that breathes slowly, evenly, like a sleeper at rest. The line between water and sky has softened, blurred into a single, vast canvas of deep blue-black. Above it all, the moon rises. Pale, deliberate, serene. Its light is not the sun's brilliance, but a cool, borrowed glow, sunlight reflected off an ancient, cratered surface. Even from here, you can see hints of those craters, each a mark of time and impact. The moon feels closer than the stars, yet it too is far away, about 384,000 kilometers from where you stand. You feel its presence, not just in light, but in motion. The moon's gravity reaches across space, pulling at the ocean and lifting. Great bulges of water on the side nearest to it and on the side farthest from it. This is the tide's secret rhythm, one you've been standing within all day without needing to name it. Here at night, with fewer distractions, you can feel it more clearly, the gentle shift in the water's edge, the soft rearranging of foam and wave, the slow inhalation and exhalation of the sea. The night breeze moves differently now, cooler, heavier with moisture. It carries the scent of seaweed, salt, and the faint metallic trace of the ocean's minerals. The soundscape has changed, too. The daytime chorus of birds has given way to the soft rush of waves, the occasional creak of dune grass, and the far-off splash of something unseen returning to deeper water. You walk along the wet sand where the tide has just been, your steps leaving dark impressions that fill with the shimmer of water before fading. The sand feels cooler here, as if it remembers. The sun only faintly. Above you, constellations begin to form, not in the sky itself, where the stars are scattered without pattern, but in your mind, where you connect them into stories. Orion's belt, the curve of the Big Dipper, the faint glow of the Pleiades. Each is both a science of light and a mythology of meaning. You pause near a cluster of tide pools left behind by the retreating water. By day, they were miniature worlds of color and motion. Now they are mirrors, holding small, perfect reflections of the sky. A star above seems doubled, one image far and unreachable, the other close enough to touch. The air here is so still that even your breath seems to ripple the surface. Somewhere farther down the shore, you hear a sound, a low, deep exhalation, followed by the faint slap of water. It might be a seal surfacing or a dolphin passing by. The night belongs to creatures you cannot always see, fish that rise to feed near the surface, nocturnal crabs that leave their burrows, plankton that glow when disturbed. If you were to wade out into the shallows now and trail your hand through the water, you might see that glow. Bioluminescence, a chemical reaction within living cells that creates its own cold, blue-green light. The moon climbs higher, and with it the tide begins to change again. You can feel the water reaching a little closer to your toes, then retreating, as if considering whether to claim more of the shore. This is the tidal cycle in motion, a slow, predictable pulse shaped by the moon's orbit and the rotation of the Earth. It has been happening for billions of years, since long before there was sand beneath your feet or air in your lungs. You lie down now, just above the high tide line, where the sand is dry and cool. The night wraps around you, and your body begins to match the ocean's rhythm. Each wave feels like a sentence, and between each is a pause long enough for thought to drift away. The constellations above seem to move, though you know it is the Earth turning beneath them. That turning is slow but constant, about 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator. Yet here, it feels like stillness. The science of this moment is vast. You are breathing air shaped by ocean currents and wind, patterns that circle the globe. You are lit by photons reflected off the moon's surface, which themselves began as nuclear energy in the sun. You are hearing waves formed by wind hundreds of kilometers away, their shapes altered by the slope of the seabed beneath you. And yet none of that complexity feels heavy. It is part of the same lullaby that has been playing since life first came to the shore. The beach at night feels like a threshold, not between land and sea, as in daylight, but between waking and dreaming. The darkness softens edges, both around you and within you. The details of the day fade into broader impressions: warmth, light, motion, sound. Even the stars seem less like separate points and more like a single dome, holding you beneath it. Faint mist begins to form over the water, catching the moonlight in delicate halos. The breeze carries it inland, in thin, cool ribbons, brushing over your skin. It smells faintly of rain, though none is coming tonight. The scent is simply the ocean breathing moisture into the air. You close your eyes and listen. The waves keep their slow pace. Somewhere, a small shell rolls in the surf, tapping softly against others. The sound is irregular but soothing, like a heartbeat with pauses. In the distance, you think you hear the call of a night bird, carried on the wind and fading into the dark. Your thoughts drift now, less in words than in images. The shimmer of sunlight on morning waves, the intricate patterns of sand beneath. Shallow water, the bright arc of a gull against the sky. These moments feel connected, threaded through by the constant presence of the sea. You realize that this beach, this meeting place of earth, water, air, and light, has been the stage for every chapter of the day you've lived. The tide is still moving, even as you grow still. Somewhere beyond your sight, deep in the ocean, the moon's pull is setting vast volumes of water into motion. Somewhere above your sight, the Earth's rotation is bringing a new horizon toward dawn. You are part of both, anchored to this moment, yet carried forward through time. You breathe in, and the air is cool, salted, and quiet. You breathe out, and the sand shifts slightly beneath you. The night holds you without weight, without demand. There is nothing to do but be here, to listen to the ocean's voice until it becomes your own. And as the waves murmur against the shore, you feel yourself loosening, floating between thought and dream, ready to follow the tide into the deep and peaceful dark. And now, as our story gently fades, I want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for spending this moment with me. Your presence here means the world, and your support helps me create even more peaceful journeys. Just for you. If this helped you rest, please consider liking, subscribing, or simply coming back tomorrow night. Until then, stay cozy, stay kind, and may your dreams tonight be soft, serene, and full of wonder. Good night, my friend. With warmth, David.